Funding for Arts in Context is provided in part by an award from the National Endowment for the Arts.
Art isn't about making money, in my mind, and art and commerce are opposing forces. And in a capitalist economy where no one can really get a grip on why anyone would do something if it wasn't for making money, art stands out as something that is misunderstood, undervalued, not valued, because it isn't about making money. And when it is, it's being designed for the market, and it often rings hollow for people. And so people aren't interested in art here because they perceive, perhaps subconsciously, that they're being marketed to, and it's inauthentic, and it doesn't really impact them on a fundamental human plane. Doesn't make them cry, doesn't make them mad, doesn't make them melancholy or remember something or inspire them to do something creative of their own. You know, it's, I feel these sculptures are pretty straightforward to some, but I consider them subversive in the larger context of American culture. You go to the beach and everyone's wearing a lot of clothes. People aren't comfortable with their bodies. People aren't comfortable with sexuality. It's hard to understand because there's so much violence on TV, and that's okay. But having a nude public sculpture might be too offensive to really be placed in public. A work of art, that's too much for people to handle. It's my feeling that in our current market-oriented cultural context, making art as a commodity isn't satisfying for me as an artist. It's I feel fortunate that making a living doing that, but I don't feel that is the end of the equation. I've begun in this past couple years to do performance art that's community and participatory oriented. C41 Embedded is a piece that we did at the Merce Cunningham Dance Space in New York City that calls on the audience to create meaning of the piece. It involves a Butoh performer. Butoh is a post-Hiroshima, post-Nagasaki Japanese dance form that manifests a lot of suffering in its aesthetic. And we had 9 photographers planted in the audience that came out one at a time, posing, pretending to be from the press, of course, and I was the first photographer. And as I began to invade the space between the audience and the performer, the audience really became uncomfortable / irate as I took photos, stepping more in between the audience and the performer. And then just when the audience has just had it, another photographer stands up out of the audience and begins to photograph me and a beat. And another photographer stands up out of the audience and begins to photograph the second photographer. And we had 9 photographers parade onto the stage. And in the end, we wound up photographing each other, getting closer and closer and closer and closer, forgetting the original subject of our intention and winding up in a cluster photographing ourselves. And for me, that was a statement on the Iraq War and commentary on media representation of suffering. The pieces that I've been developing over the past couple of years that I see as an extension of my sculpture work are designed to build community, grow community, and help to define the culture of the communities in which I'm working. The Hellfire Weenie Roast, we brought out 5 kneeling, praying figures with flaming heads, a pulpit, and when you lift up the lid of the pulpit, it's full of a cooler full of hot dogs. And so you take a hot dog out of the cooler, stick it on the end of a long barbecue fork that has its fulcrum at the pulpit, and you light the mind of your constituency aflame, and you have yourself a weenie roast. It caters to the most fundamental need, hunger, and they can't feed themselves a weenie without at least pondering what is being stated. For me, creating art outside the market economy is crucial. And there's only one way to do that, and it's to be financed with other aims in mind other than market value. So for me, since I don't have that, I've been financing these performance pieces as a manifestation of that belief that we need to be creating work as artists that isn't commercial, that's for the community, it's for people, it builds community, and it defines a culture that we could be proud of.
If I make the most beautiful candle holder in the world, like it's just, I mean, you look at it and you just think like, wow, but you think I'm an, every time you look at that candle holder, you're gonna go, what a shame.
She's a gambler, spinning wheels, the poison victim, a look of steel, the coldest hearts you've ever felt, the coldest hands you've ever held.
When I am involved with the creative process with someone who needs something in their life, it's less about the object than it is about our interaction.
She is elusive and I'm awake, divinely real, there's nothing fake or mystery.
The work that I'm producing is like a meditation. I'm producing something for a person. And so while I'm making these pieces that I'm working on, I'm thinking about this person and what this piece is for them and how it relates. I build a lot of tables, and I think about the breaking of bread, and when we give people their tables, you know, we give them some bread, loaf of bread, and it's a celebration, and a celebration of the partnership of this creative process that we create together.
What more is there to hold on to? Strand of hair is all I own. A gift to me, this sorry soul.
My parents are both really creative individuals, and I had the good fortune of growing up out in rural Texas and Thorndale, and my parents designed and built our house, and I grew up around craft and community. I had a lot of challenges with education in public school as a kid. I didn't really feel like I fit in. I had a real hard time concentrating and focusing on the academics. I think part of it had to do with my foundation of practical application. We want to build a house. Well, let's get all this wood and do this process to it, and then one of my early jobs was soaping nails, and then you take and you dull the point of the nail so that when you drive it into the wood, it doesn't split the wood. And I mean, that's like 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, and that's something I did. I cut my education short at 14 and moved out of my house against my parents' wishes and got a job. I pushed out into the world and struggled and with a lot of things, living day to day and trying to figure out how to eat and live and survive, and as a kid. And then I got an interesting opportunity to go to Oregon to pick pine cones for reforestation projects. I just climbed trees and picked pine cones for 20 days. You get up and you just climb trees all day long. It's like basically doing chin-ups and sit-ups all day long for 20 days, and you get paid for it, and you get the most amazing view of the world. You can imagine climbing a 200-foot tall tree that's on the side of a mountain, and you're up at the top of the tree where you can actually put your hand at the bottom of the tree. You can't even barely, you're climbing on the bark, and you're wearing spurs, and you're spurring up. You're spurring up, free climbing, all the way up, until you're 200 feet up, and you can actually put your hand around the tip of the tree. You're up there, and the wind is blowing, and you look down, and you can tell that you're blowing, maybe 20, 30 feet side to side, and you're looking out over a huge river valley, and there's just mountains and trees, and and then you get to work and you're picking cones because it's pretty scary up there, and you got more trees to climb, and and so the last day was the only day that I was working by myself, and it was just a bunch of things that came together to create a circumstance where I fell out of a tree. I fell 50 feet out of a tree, and I did a backflip with a half twist and landed on my feet. And I as my feet came around, I was going really fast, and I just couldn't. There was just nothing I could do. I just compressed down, boosh, and it just knocked me out. And when I woke up, I had no consciousness of anything. It was just completely, all I could see was the sky, and I had no self-awareness. It was just call amnesia or something. And then slowly I got little pieces. And then I realized that I was a person, and then I realized who I was, and then I realized that something had happened and I was hurt. And then I knew what had happened, but I couldn't remember it. I remembered that I had been picking pine cones, And then just little pieces. I still didn't have the whole thing, but I knew that I was hurt. I knew that I had fallen. It turned out I had exploded 2 of my vertebrae, my 12th thoracic and my 1st lumbar, and I became aware that I had to, like, nobody was gonna come and get me. I was 70 miles out in the middle of the forest up a washed out creek bed, and I wouldn't be expected back until 8 or 9 o'clock that night. I couldn't walk, so I just started dragging myself. I dragged myself like half a mile down the side of this mountain, just my arms. And on the way down, like, I would get into this process of like feeling this blackness coming in, and that I just started like praying like to just anything I could think of, you know, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Shiva, anybody. I would drag myself for a while, and then the blackness would come, and I would just cry and feel like it was like pushing the blackness back. I mean, it was like coming at me, just like I could see it, and I just would concentrate as hard as I could to push it back away. And then, you know, I would just realize that, you know, I'm dying, and I'm either gonna die here, I'm either gonna just stop trying to get out of here and lay down and die, or I'm gonna keep going. And so I made the decision, I'm gonna keep going until I'm dead. The name of the cooperative that I'm involved with is called the Splinter Group, and we're a consortium of craftspeople, and we interface with architects, designers. We're producing what we would consider the best we can do.
Trouble, trouble, trouble. Why can't you let me be? There's trouble, trouble, trouble. Why can't you let me be? All the folks are asking for you. Why must you bother with me? The Iceman been complaining, the landlord too. I told him I ain't got 5, so they will have to take 2, 'cause I've got trouble, 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 holding this man of mine. Well, it seems there's always trouble every time that I speak my mind. Tell him all about it, Marcus. My man was wanted, there were no he-men left. I tried to satisfy my soul with gin and cigarettes, 'cause I've got trouble, 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 holding this man of mine. Well, it seems there's always trouble every time that I speak my mind. And I'll tell you something else. He got a head like a monkey. He looked just like a bear. Mouth full of tobacco, squirting it everywhere. But he my daddy. Lord knows I love him just the same. My mama done told me he's my baby, but I'm scared to call his name. He called me up this morning from the county jail. He said, now quit your ranting, female, come down here, collect my bail, or I've got trouble, 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 holding this man of mine. Well, it seems there's always trouble every time that I speak my mind.
Funding for Arts in Context is provided in part by an award from the National Endowment for the Arts.